3 out of 4 people that are taking a placebo in a depression study get better. Now that's 75%, which means that when that person sees the pill represents hope or possibility for them. They begin to select a new idea, a new thought, that they could be better, a possibility. It's called a clear intention.
Hello guys, today we have Dr. Dispenza with us, so prepare yourself for an amazing and very interesting speech. Is it possible that just about everything in our life is in our control? Are we really responsible for everything that's happening to us? If you agree with Dispenza, that's the fact. But what can we do to change that? I mean, we all want to change some aspect of our life. Everybody has some unpleasant part of their life that needs to be changed. Dispenza will explain how it all works, what's our part in the process, and what do we need to do to finally change our life in a positive way. So stay with us and enjoy this beautiful interview with Dr. Dispenza.
Some people will begin to become inspired, enthusiastic, excited, and when you combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, you are changing a person's biology from living in the past to living in the future. And they begin to make their own pharmacy of antidepressants that begins to help them. Now, it's not a one-shot deal, because in those studies, for example, the person who's taking the placebo has to take that pill for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. So every day, then, they're reminding themselves of a new future reality. And that pill represents a symbol. It represents a symbol of hope, a symbol of possibility. And instead of them relating to themselves in a limited way, that they have to resign to the idea that they can't think greater than how they feel, in a depression study, or feelings have become the means of thinking, they're actually changing their physiology by thought alone. And the redundancy and the repetition of that cycle begins to select different functions in the nervous system, and your nervous system is the best pharmacy or drug producer in the world, and begins to select new genes and instruct new genes to cause a person's biology to begin to change. And if you keep knocking on the genetic door, there's a good possibility that you can program a gene or upregulate a gene to do something well and downregulate a gene to turn off. And so my interest is in understanding how the placebo works. How does it work? Once you understand how it works, will you be able to teach it? Because do you need the sugar pill in order to move into a new state of being? Or can you teach a person to select an unknown instead of a known, and continuously select that unknown and emotionally embrace that future before the event occurs, so much so that the body, as the unconscious mind, begins to believe it's living in that future reality in the present moment. And if the person does that, just like taking the placebo for 6 weeks, alters their state of being every single day, is it possible that that unknown becomes a known, and they begin to change their physiology and biology just by thought alone?
So let's talk a little bit about that process, what you're talking about right there. In your book, you're talking about the process of going from a thought to thoughts leading to an attitude, attitude leading to a belief. Let's talk a little bit about that process and how that relates to what you're talking about.
So most of our thoughts and feelings come from our past experiences. They come from our memories. In fact, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a record of all the things you've learned and experienced to date. It's an artifact. And when you have an experience, when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your 5 senses plug you into the external environment. And as your brain is processing all of this vital sensory data, all of that information rushes back to the brain. When it reaches the brain, it causes jungles of neurons to organize themselves into networks, to string into patterns, to reflect their interaction with their external environment, The moment those neurons organize into patterns, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And so experiences tend to create more long-term memories because it patterns or stamps or embosses networks of neurons into very specific patterns, and then the emotional quotient helps us to remember the event. So we learn something new intellectually, we also cause networks of neurons to form. I mean, the Nobel Prize laureate Kandel in the year 2000 found that when people learned just one bit of information, they doubled the number of connections in their brain from 1,300 connections to 2,600 connections. So if they didn't review that information or repeat it, the connections pruned apart. So we know then that learning semantic information begins to organize circuitry in the brain, and experiences enrich the brain. The end product of experience, of course, is the emotion, and it causes us to feel certain ways. You can remember where you were on 9/11. You can tell me who you were with, what time of day it was, what you were doing, because whatever you were seeing in that moment or hearing in that moment changed how you were feeling. And the moment you felt altered or you felt differently, significantly, your brain perked up and you paid attention to whatever caused that. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. So then most of our thoughts and feelings tend to be within the neural circuitry of the past and the emotions of the past chemically. So if you take a thought, thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. And how you think and how you feel creates a state of being. So if you combine a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, and you have a series of good thoughts that are connected to a series of good feelings, that cycle of thinking and feeling creates what's called an attitude. If you have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to some pretty bad feelings, you'll say, I have a pretty bad attitude today. So if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, then attitudes are just shortened states of being. You can feel good in the morning, you can feel bad in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, and you begin to string attitudes together, when you combine an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, you start to form what's called beliefs. Now, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwire it in your brain. And because beliefs are based on past experiences, then the very boundaries of our beliefs are how we feel. And so when our beliefs get challenged, it typically doesn't feel right. So I know from the research that we've done that the redundancy of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking over time, for example, a person has an insecure thought, then they feel insecure. The moment they feel insecure, they think more insecure thoughts. They fire and wire more circuits in their brain to feel more chemicals of insecurity, and then once they're feeling insecure, they think more insecure thoughts, and they do this over and over again. The redundancy and the repetition of that cycle over time conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind. Once the body becomes the mind, that's called a habit. Turns out that 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old are a set of habituations, unconscious thoughts, unconscious behaviors, unconscious emotional reactions that function like a subconscious computer program. So back to beliefs. An attitude, an attitude, an attitude are shortened states of being. And you combine them together then a belief then, the cycle of thinking and feeling over time, creates a subconscious state of being. So all beliefs are subconscious states of being. We have beliefs about God, about spirituality, about health, about relationships, about love, and all of those are based on our past experiences, but the majority of those beliefs, we don't even know that we believe them because we think they're true, because they're not functioning primarily in the conscious mind. So then, if you take a belief, and you stack them together, you start to form what's called perceptions. And perceptions have everything to do with the relationships we have, the things we create, the behaviors we demonstrate, and even the choices we make in our relationships. So then, why is that important? Because then, if beliefs are subconscious states of being, and you're stringing beliefs together, then most people are viewing their life through the lens of the past, unconsciously. and they are filling in reality. They're seeing reality. They're filling it in from their past memory. We know this to be true because they did an amazing experiment where they took a group of people and they had them wear these lenses. And the lenses were divided in half. When they looked to one side, they saw one color. When they looked to another side, they saw another color. And they said to them, okay, well, wear these glasses every day for 2 weeks. Take your kids to school, do all the things you do at work, go shopping, work out, live your life. At the end of 2 weeks, they brought those people back into the lab and they said, look to the left, what color do you see? They said, we don't see a color. Look to the right, what color do you see? We don't see a color. Now, it says a couple things. Number one, the eyes don't see. The brain sees. But more emphatically important is that those people were filling in their external reality based on their memory in their brain. If they were truly seeing, they would be seeing those colors, right? So then, in our perceptions then, we are overlaying our future. We're overlaying the present moment with our memory of the past. And so then that then begins to diminish possibility. And it begins to close down the way that we can begin to navigate and function in our lives. So then, in order for us to change any belief or perception about ourselves and our lives, we have to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in the brain and the emotional conditioning in the body, and the body has to respond to a new mind.